I had to stop the sharing. I stopped the recording. Downloads, integration, stub. Okay. So I'll just share my screen and
We'll take a screenshot of that.
yes. Okay, so my screen is shared now, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is something which will be very useful for you to understand or to remember the thing. Okay, so
Okay.
this is, suppose this is the module hierarchy. We have A, B. These are the high level module. From A and B, this C module is being called, and from the C module, the D module is being called. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so now if we need to test C or we need to test D, and this A or B module is not present, so we will need the driver,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
if we need to test A, B, or C, and this D is not present, then we can use
System.
this stub.
System.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so this is, I think, a good diagram to remember the thing. Okay, have you taken the screenshot?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this is required for the integration testing. So you can also take the screenshot of this one, and after that we'll discuss about the integration testing.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, okay, fine. I will stop sharing and I will start the sharing again. Okay, hope my screen is visible.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so what is integration testing? So as the name suggests, integration testing is basically when the different modules of the software or different components of the software are integrated, and then we test the integration or different parts of the system. At that time it is called as integration testing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so so integration testing is normally done by the testing team. It is not done by the development team. So there may be more than one level of integration testing, and it may be carried out on test objects of varying size. So why is it written that there could be more than one level of integration testing? Because whenever we are integrating two or more modules, we need to do the integration testing. Now it might happen that our whole system is having 10 modules and we don't have those 10 modules. We are using the iterations, or we are using the incremental module, and we have only 3 or 4 modules ready. So shall we wait for all the 10 modules to get ready and then we'll do our integration testing? No, we'll test these 3 modules, so that if we get some bug after the integration of these 3 modules, those can be fixed. Rather, rather than waiting for all the 10 modules to be developed and then we integrate those and then we test those, it's better to take the advantage of stubs and drivers, and let's test whatever is already developed. So if we just test those things which have been developed, and if we find the bugs out of there, so we can catch those bugs at the early stage, and those can be fixed at the early stage. So later when we'll have all the components ready, so at that time we'll get less number of bugs, and the flow of the bugs from the higher level to lower level will also be minimized, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So component testing tests the interaction between software components and is done after component testing. So obviously, once the components are developed, so component testing will be done. And after that, when they are integrated together, so the interaction between different software components, so that is done in the component integration testing. So system integration testing tests the interaction between different system and may be done after system testing. In this case, the developing organization may control only one side of the interface. So changes may be destabilizing. Business processes implemented as workflows may involve a series of systems that can even run off different platforms, so you don't need to go to this jargons and all. So remember one thing, there are two type of integration testing. One is component integration testing and one is system integration testing. So one is, what is component integration testing? Component integration testing is basically what we talked about. There are different components and we are integrating the components together and we are testing them. What is system integration testing? See, if we take this whole amazon.com as a system, there are different modules out of there, and where there are some third party applications as well, third party softwares as well, which are integrated there, like
Mhm.
the payment module. So payment module is not something which is again, will be developed by the developers who are developing the other modules, like the login module or the the product module, the cart module. Payment module is something which is being developed by some third party developers or third party application itself. So we are just taking the application from their side and we are integrating that with our system, right? So that is a
Mhm.
separate system. In all, I mean, the payment module is a separate system. Like there are different payment module provider, like the Razor Pay, right? There are other players in the market as well for the payment module. So we just take that as a whole and we just integrate that with our system. So that is
Mhm.
called something that is called as system integration testing,
Mhm.
where we actually integrate different system. So the first system is basically there are different components out there which we are integrating, so that is a whole system, and we are taking some other system from outside and then we are integrating that and then we are
Mhm.
testing the whole integration. So that is called
Mhm.
system integration testing. So why integration testing is required? Now, although each software module is unit tested, defects still exist for various reasons. Defect might exist because when we are testing the each module separately, right? So then why it might happen that defects could still exist when we are integrating those modules. So a module is generally designed by the individual software developer, right? I mean, it can be a team as well, that a particular team is involved in the development of that module and the other module is getting developed by the other team or some other developers. Now in case of development, the the teams might not have the proper knowledge of the other module, okay, because they are involved in the development of their own module. So they might not be having the in-depth knowledge or the programming logic of the other module which is being developed by some other team, right?
Mhm.
So if they are not having the proper logic or knowledge of the proper logic of the other module, so but these modules are not totally independent of each other, they need some data, so they have some dependency in between each other. So now when these softwares or these modules are integrated, it might happen that that particular module is behaving correctly from independently, but when we are integrating those modules, there are some discrepancies that are present. I mean, the second module or the lower level module which is expecting something from the high level module, but the high level module sometimes in some edge cases is providing some other data to the lower level module, and that's why there could be the bugs or the defects that are existing there, okay.
Mhm.
So that's why integration testing becomes necessary to verify the integration of different software modules, whether they are working perfectly in Unity or not. Okay.
Mhm.
Then at the time of module development, there are wide chances of change in requirements by the client. So these new requirements may not be unit tested, and hence system integration testing becomes necessary. Because when we are working in the iterative module, or when we are working in the agile model, or when we are working in the incremental model, so at that time we are flexible with the requirement, right? So the requirements can change at any time. We are always, talking to the customer, we are always talking to the client, and they might give, after looking at the prototype, after looking at the development, they might give some other um, um, criteria as well, or they might change their requirement as well. Now when the different development team is involved in the development, so it's not always mandatory that all the teams are providing their demo at the same time, or all the teams are present when it is being demoed to the customer. Now suppose there are three components: component A, component B, and component C, and three different teams are developing those, right? Now when the team B is ready with the component B, they're providing the demo to the customer or client. Okay, and now the customer is providing some feedback. They are providing some requirement changes to for the component B. Okay,
Mhm.
now what will happen is team A and team C, they don't know about this requirement changes. Okay, and they are developing their software as per the previous discussion. Now we had seen yesterday, right, in the agile model of development, we don't do much documentation.
Yeah.
Rather we focus towards incorporating those changes, and
Mhm.
uh, you know in the communication in between the teams. Now suppose for reason, say team B has communicated that with the team C, that these changes have been offered by or requested by the customer. They have informed it to team A as well, but team A has somehow missed that communication. So they don't know what changes are being done in that component B, right? They have
Mhm.
developed the component A as per the previous discussion, and that is working fine, because when they will be testing the component A, this is working fine. But now, as the requirement of the component B has got changed, it is expecting something more from component A, right? So
Mhm.
now, when this integration will be done, so there will be defects present in the whole software.
Mhm.
So that is what is written here.
Okay.
So at the time of module development, there are wide chances of change in requirements by the client. These new requirements may not be unit tested, and hence system integration testing becomes necessary. Okay. So
Mhm.
the interfaces of the software modules with the database could be erroneous. So the database is also there. So do you have any experience or any knowledge about the database?
No.
Okay. So database is basically where we store our data. So that is something which is so database is basically used where we store all our data. Okay, and that is called backend. So whatever we are seeing, whatever we see in front of us, that is the front end. Okay, the UI and all. UI is basically user interface. So this, whatever we are seeing in front of us, so those are the front end, or those are the UI. Now all the data that is going through the system, so that has to be stored somewhere, right?
Mhm.
So to store the data, we use the software which is called database, where all the data gets stored. Now the software interfaces, or the UI, okay, the user interface, so those have the communication with the database, those have the connection with the database. They are going communicating with the database, they're fetching the data from the database, and then they are showing it to the user, right? Now
Mm.
If the interfaces between the software modules and the database is erroneous, in that case, when we will be integrating these modules, it could possibly have some defects in it.
Mm.
Okay, now the
Mm.
external hardware interfaces, if any, could be erroneous, because we might be using some external hardware as well. Like, we have a software which has the integration with printer as well, right? Or
Mm.
suppose there are some other things, like there is some biometric say there are some biometric integration. Okay, biometric hardware integration with the software. Okay, so in these cases, if there are some issues in the hardware interfaces, like the biometric or suppose in the printer itself, or suppose we have some scanners, right? um, you might be knowing in the healthcare industry that whenever the patient is coming, so all his patient data or
Mm.
his medical history is taken from him, and
Mm.
those are scanned and those are sent to the system. So the system is software, but it is
Mm.
coming, the data is coming from a hardware, which is scanner
Mm.
here, right?
Mm.
So so if those hardwares are having some errors in there, and when those are integrated as a whole system, so there could be the possibility of having defects, because we are getting some erroneous data from there.
Mm.
And from the coding point of view or from the developer point of view, there could be some inadequate exception handling as well, which could cause issues. So what is exception handling? Exception handling is like the edge cases. Okay, the edge cases which possibly is not the scenario which will occur all the time, but maybe sometime that scenario might get occurred. Like, if I give you the example, like during the payment. Okay, so during the payment, suppose for a second your network got disconnected.
Mm.
Okay, for a second. So what will be the scenario after that? Whether your payment will get done, or it will be failing. So these are the, like, the edge cases or the exceptions which
Mm.
has to be handled by the developers. Now, if
Mm.
these edge cases are not handled by the developer, in that case, like the software might have some defects. Okay, so all these things, integration testing has to be performed. Okay,
Mm. Mm.
so what are the different approaches of integration testing? Now, to understand this, we will need those the second diagram. So there are different strategies or approaches to do the integration testing. The first is big bang approach. So what do we do in the big bang approach? All the components or systems are integrated simultaneously, after which everything is tested as a whole. So we don't do the integration of two modules or three modules. If there are 10 modules, we don't do that. What we do is all the components are integrated together at a time, and then the whole software is tested. So this is called the big bang approach of integration
Mm.
testing. So this is very simple. I mean, all the modules are integrated at a time, and then the whole software is tested as a one piece of application. So this is the big bang approach. Now we have the incremental approach as well. So in this incremental approach, what we do is, whenever two or more modules are ready, uh, which are related to each other, we will integrate those modules, and we will test those modules. Okay, and we'll test that whether these modules are functioning properly or not. And now, as more and more modules will be developed, we'll continue integrating those modules with it, and we'll continue our testing with that. Okay, so that is called the
Okay.
incremental approach. Now in this incremental approach, again we will be needing the stubs and drivers, right?
Yes.
Because it's
Yeah.
when you have, when you are in the initial phase of the development, you won't have all the modules ready for you for the testing. So now if the lower module is not ready and you need to test the higher module, what do you need?
The driver.
The driver is required when you don't have the higher module ready.
Okay.
The higher module is
The
basically
start. Uh-huh.
yes, the higher modules are basically the modules which comes first in, which are in the topmost layer.
Mhm.
Okay, so if the higher modules are ready but the lower modules are not ready, then you will need stubs. Okay,
Mhm.
and if the higher module is not ready, you need to test the lower modules. So at that time we'll need driver. So you just,
Drivers.
remember the first
Yeah.
diagram. The drivers will be always in the top level, the stubs will be always there in the lower level.
Mhm.
Okay, so stubs and drivers do not implement the entire programming logic of the software module, but just simulate data communication with the calling module. So obviously they don't have the entire programming logic, right? They will just
Mhm.
mimic, they will just work as a simulator. So they will just look at the code that is coming from the module that you are testing, and they will just, according to the data that is coming to them, they will just give you the result. That's all they will do, so that you can test the modules that you are actually testing. So we don't test, so this is something that you need to remember, is we don't test the driver or stub. They are just used to test some other modules, so they are
Mhm.
used as the simulator. So there are two type of approaches present in incremental approach. The first one is top down approach, the second one is bottom up approach. Now I would need you to open the this one, the second diagram.
Which
Have
one?
you opened that?
Yeah.
Okay, now you can see this is a whole software. Okay, we have different module. The module one is the topmost module, or the highest module, highest high level module.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now from the module one we have different modules like module 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then module 2 is using module 6, module 4 is using module 7, and then module 7 is using module 8 and module 9. So now what is top down integration testing approach? Top down integration testing approach is, will integrate this module 1 with module 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we'll start with the top level module, with the higher level module, and we'll integrate those, we'll start integrating those with the lower level modules. So first the module 1 will get developed, then module 2, 3, 4, 5 will get developed. So once the module 2, 3, 4, 5, or suppose the module 2 and 3 is ready, we'll integrate this module 1 and with module 2 and module 3, we'll test that.
Mhm.
Now suppose module 6 is developed. So we'll integrate it with module 2 and we'll test module 1, 2, 6 and 3. Then module 4 is developed. We'll integrate that with this and we'll test that. Then say module 7 is developed. We'll integrate with the top level modules. We'll test that. Then module 5 is developed. We'll integrate that and we'll test this. Now module 8 and 9 is developed. We'll integrate it with module 7 and we'll integrate the whole system. So that is top down integration. From the top we start the integration, and we move towards the lower level modules. What is happened during the bottom up integration? The exact opposite. Okay, we start with the lower level modules. Okay, we start with module 6. Suppose the module 6 is developed. So now we'll use a driver which will
Mhm.
be acting as module 2,
Mm.
right? Because
Yeah.
the lower level module is ready, the higher level module is not ready. So to
Mhm.
test the module 6, we'll use a driver which will act as module 2.
Mhm.
Now suppose the module 2 and 3 is ready. So what we'll do, we'll integrate module 6 with module 2. Module 3 is also ready. So we will use
Driver
driver
for
as module 1,
one.
right? So in that case, we are able to test all these three modules. Now module 8 and 9 is ready. We'll use driver as the module 7. We'll test module
Seven.
8, 9. And as the
Mhm.
modules will get developed, those will be integrated from the bottom and will reach the topmost module at the
Mhm.
last.
Mhm.
So is it clear, the top down integration testing approach and the bottom
Yes.
up integration
Yes.
testing approach?
That's using stubs and drivers to test. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So let's see what is written there in the slide. So in top to down approach, testing takes place from the top to down, following the control flow of the software system. It takes help of stubs for testing. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay. In the bottom up approach, in the bottom up strategy, each module at lower levels is tested with higher modules until all modules are tested. It takes help of drivers for testing.
Mhm.
Okay, so I hope
Yeah.
everything is clear and everything is fine
Yeah.
until now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, okay, great. So now let's move to system testing. So what is system testing? So system testing is basically when all the integration testing is done, all the different modules are integrated and those are integrated, that integration testing is done. After that, so we have the whole application in front of us. Ready? So the whole
Mm.
application is ready in front of us. So now we need to test the whole application. We won't look at how the payment module is behaving, how the suppose the cart module is behaving, how the payment confirmation or the order confirmation module is behaving. We are not going to look at that. We're not going to look at individual module. We will test the whole system. Okay. So in system testing, the behavior of the whole system or product is tested as defined by the scope of the development project or product. Now, if you remember the V model, okay, in the V model, what was there? Each uh, in the verification process, there are different documentations which were there, and for each documentation, we were there. There was
Testing.
different testing
Testing.
associated with
Yeah.
that. So now,
Mhm.
if we look at the first state, which was requirement analysis, if I
Mhm.
remember it correctly.
Yeah.
So the requirement analysis was mapped with the system testing, because when we'll do the system testing, we'll look at the requirement, whether the requirement of the customer fulfilling is getting fulfilled or not through our
Mhm.
system, through our software. So that is basically tested in the system testing. The requirement specification is tested. We test according to the requirement specification. So system testing is carried out by specialist tester or independent tester. This level of testing is done by the testers only. Okay, the developers are not involved in the system testing. It may include tests based on risks and or requirement specifications. So this is important. Business process, use cases, or other high level description of system behavior, interaction with the operating system and system resources. So basically the documentations that we are having during the risk analysis, if we are doing the
Spiral.
spiral model, then we have the risk analysis, and at that time we'll generate some of the documentations as well. So basically whatever documentation, whatever requirement specification, whatever business process use cases we are having, if we are following the agile, then also we'll have the regular calls, and some of the documentations will be preparing out of that. If not documentation, we'll have the user stories or tasks as well, right, that I was showing you yesterday. So from those
Mhm.
user stories or tasks also we'll get the requirements, because whatever we need to perform, that will be documented there, or that will be noted there. So from that, those as well, we'll get the test cases, and based on that we'll do our system testing. So there are two type of system testing. One is functional system testing, one is non-functional system testing. So what is functional system testing? Functional system testing is basically checking the functionality of the application, whether the application is functioning properly or not. That is done by the functional system testing. What do you mean by the functional system testing then? Suppose I want to purchase a laptop from amazon.com. Okay, so now whether I am able to purchase the laptop or not, that is functional system testing. What is non-functional system testing? Maybe this is the performance or the load or the stress testing on of the software or of the amazon.com. So that comes under non-functional requirement. So it also involves the functionality, but when we put some load on the system, how does it behave? Suppose, let me give you an example. So you are able to go to amazon.com and you are able to purchase a laptop from there anytime, right? But
Mhm.
there are times, suppose the what is that called,
Black Friday, Black Friday.
black friday, right? During the black friday, tons of users are going there and they are trying to purchase at the same time.
Mhm.
So the same system which using which you were able to buy the laptop yesterday, and using the
Mhm.
same system you'll be able to purchase the laptop tomorrow, but you are not able to purchase today because of the huge load on the system. So that is called non-functional testing.
Mhm.
Okay, so that is called like the performance testing, the load testing, the stress testing. We'll talk about this later. So these are
Mhm.
called the non-functional requirement or non-functional testing. So these
Mhm.
two aspects we need to test in our system testing. We need to test the functionality as well, and we need to test the non-functional requirements as well.
Mhm.
The system testing is most often the final test to verify that the system to be delivered meets the specification and its purpose. This is the final testing that we need to do on the whole system, just to make sure that nothing is deviating and it delivers or it meets the specification and its purpose. Okay. And
Mhm.
system testing requires a controlled test environment with regard to sorry for that. Yeah, system testing requires a controlled test environment with regard to, among other things, control of the software version, testware, and the test data. A system test is executed by the development organization in a properly controlled environment. So, as like we were talking, right? You asked the question, what is test environment setup,
Mhm.
right? So, test
Yeah.
environment setup, as we mentioned, that there is a environment and test environment, and we need to set up the environment before we do our testing there, right? So we need to set up the environment as well. We need to see which software version we are testing, the testwares like which kind of softwares we'll be needing to test that software, right? We might need a particular OS operating system in the system. We might need some other softwares as well. We might need the test data. We might, it's not might, we actually need some test data to test any kind of software. So all those things are required for the software testing to be performed, and it is done by the, normally it is done by the same organization or same company which is developing the software.
Mhm.
It's not same with the same developers will be testing that, but there will be some set of testers in the same organization which will be performing the system testing, okay, in a controlled environment. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Great. So now when the system testing is performed, when the system testing is done, we will do acceptance testing. So what is acceptance testing? When the development organization has performed a system test and has corrected all the defects, the system will be delivered to the user or the customer for acceptance testing. So acceptance testing will be done by the customer, whether they are ready to accept the software or not. Okay. The acceptance
Mhm.
test should answer questions such as, can the system be released? What, if any, are the outstanding business or risk? Has development made their obligations or not? So basically, from the acceptance side, acceptance testing, the the customer will test the software from their end, and they will see whether the end goal is achieved or not, whether all the requirements are fulfilled or not, and finally whether we are in a position to release the software or to deploy the software or to take the software to the production or not, so the end users can use the software or not. Okay.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
acceptance testing is done by the user or customer, although other stakeholders may be involved as well. So sometimes what is done, there are different type of acceptance testing as well, which we'll see in the next slide. So what normally is done is, along with the customers, they take some of the end users as well for the acceptance testing, or they might take some stakeholders from the development organization as well, like the business analyst or the BAs who knows the in and out of the software, who knows everything about the software. So they could be involved as well in the acceptance testing, so that then they can test it in a better way. Okay, they can test the software in a better way. The goal of acceptance testing is to establish confidence in the system. Now, if we want to check whether we can release the software or not, we need to establish the confidence. So that's why the acceptance testing is done. This is most often focused on a validation type of testing. So you remember the verification and validation. So what is
Yeah.
validation? Validation is basically whatever
And
we
the
have developed, does it
is it
meet the end goal or not?
right.
Or whether we have developed it correctly or not. So obviously this comes in the validation type of testing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. Acceptance testing may occur at more than just one single level. So there are different level of acceptance testing as well. A commercial of the shelf software product may be acceptance tested when it is installed or integrated. So this is not something very important, and this is not a general case as well, so you can like ignore that one. Acceptance testing of the usability of the component may be done during component testing. So this is normally we don't do, but like in the agile or in the iterative or in the uh, incremental model, as the uh, customer is always involved, right? So when we are doing the component testing, at that time also we can give the component to the customer and they can test it from their side as well. So that
Mhm.
will be the acceptance testing of that particular component. Okay.
Mhm.
Acceptance testing of a new functional enhancement may come before system testing. So if we are doing a new functional enhancement, so that the testing of that acceptance, the testing from the user side or from the client side may come before system testing as well. So suppose the users, or I mean the almost the software is ready, now finally they are asking for something, some other functionality, some new functionality, and that has been developed. So first what we'll do is, it will be given to the customer, they will check that whether that particular model is working fine or not, the new functional enhancement, and that if that is working fine, so again a system testing will be done. Okay.
Mhm.
So there are different type of acceptance testing. The first one is user acceptance testing. So in the user acceptance testing, they will basically test that whether the product or the application which is developed, so that meets the end goal or not, whether that is fit for use or not. So that is user acceptance testing. Okay, what is operational acceptance testing? Operational acceptance testing, you don't need to remember all these things. Okay, the first thing is that you don't need to remember all these things, and the it they're not going to ask this in interview as well. They are mostly going to ask you what is acceptance testing and
Mm.
what is alpha testing, what is beta testing. That we'll talk later, but you just for just learning purpose, just let understand it. So what is operational acceptance testing? Operational acceptance testing is normally done by the system administration. Okay, so they will check whether the backup or restore can be done of the whole application or not, or like whether the security vulnerabilities will be tested, how can the systems can be maintained, okay, the disaster recovery. So these things are, I mean, the operational thing, the backup restore, whether those things are doing correctly or not. So these are called as operational acceptance. Okay, then the
Mm.
contract acceptance. So whenever the contract is done between the client side and the development company side, so after everything is developed and during the acceptance testing, they will check the contract as well, and as per the contract the product will be tested. So that is called contract acceptance testing. It is performed against the contract's acceptance criteria. For producing custom developed software, acceptance should be formally defined when the contract is agreed. Okay, and
Mm.
finally the compliance acceptance testing. So there may be different compliances in different regions. So based on that region or regulation, the compliance has to be tested as well. Like in the federation in the US, there are different compliance that you cannot store the patient data after the patient is discharged after 30 days or maybe 6 months or 1 year. So these
Mm.
regulations are there. So they,
Mm.
this regulations has to be tested in the system as well, that whether they are deleting all the patient data after say 60 days or 90 days after the patient is released. Okay, so this
Mm.
type of things or testing is called compliance acceptance testing. It is also known as regulation acceptance testing. Is performed against the regulations which must be adhered to, such as governmental, legal, or safety regulation. Okay,
Mm.
then the concept of alpha testing and beta testing is there. So just for the interview sake, just for the sake of interview, remember what is alpha testing. Alpha testing is basically a cross section of potential user, and the members of the developers organization are invited to test the system or use the system. So basically some of the tester or some of the business analysts from the development team and the customers or the client, so they will sit together and they will do the testing. So that is called the alpha testing. So this is a type of acceptance testing. Then there is a beta testing. So do you know what is beta testing? Do you have any idea?
Mm.
So sometimes we got the beta version of a software released, and we use that beta version. Have you ever heard of the beta version?
No. No. No.
Okay, so whenever we use some software, so it is called that the beta version of the software is released. So what they do is, and we hear a lot about it, about in case of WhatsApp. So they say that we are releasing a beta version of it. So what is the meaning of beta version? So
The
the
second version, the improved version.
the client will actually release a particular software for some of his users. They won't open it for all the users to use it. Okay, so they will release it for some of the users who will be actually using the software. They will ask them to use the software and they will ask them for feedback. So
Mm.
basically they are testing the software by the real life users, but not
Mm.
all the users are going to use it. It will be tested by some of the users, they will give their feedback, and then if they are finding any bugs or they're finding any deviation or they're finding any feedback, so on top of that they will give the recommendations to the development team, and they will do the changes accordingly. So this testing sends a system to a cross section of users who install it and use it under real world working condition. The users send records of incidents with the system to the development organization where the defects are repaired, right? So
Yeah.
alpha testing is done by a section of the customer and some of the team members from the development team as well. So that is called alpha testing. This is something you need to remember because this is asked in the interviews. What is alpha testing? What is beta testing? So alpha testing is done by the client and some of the members from the development side as well. Beta testing is done by the real life users where they provide their feedback and accordingly the changes are done.
Mhm.
So this is alpha and beta testing. So I think we are done with today's section and we have some time left, but as you were requesting, I think we can conclude here. So
Yeah.
in the last, I think we have not left anything. I think I have completed everything, but still, like you can go through this type of acceptance testing. Just read through this ones.
Yeah.
These are not very
Mhm.
much required, but still, if you have any query, you can ask me tomorrow. I will try to answer those. Other
Sure.
than that, I think I have covered everything what has to be covered today. But still, if you
Okay.
have any query, you can ask me tomorrow, and we can like answer those.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
Uh,
so that's all for today. Let's meet tomorrow. Have
yeah.
a good night, and we'll see tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
We'll meet
You have
tomorrow.
a good day too. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thanks a lot.
Mhm.
Bye.
Mhm. Bye.
Yeah.